the Odyssey, the epics begin in media res, in the middle of things. And the whole thing is you're speaking to the muses and you're saying, what story will I tell? And what you realize is your story is every story, and you're not the owner of your story, that the universe owns the stories. And you're telling the story that the universe sends to you because your heart and your soul are open to it.
This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. People and Their Poems is presented by Ornog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of People and Their Poems. It's a little bit of a different episode because we have a little bit of role reversal going on. I moved out from behind the camera, and obviously I'm in front. I'm Ed Dzitko, and I am joined by the regular host of People and Their Poems, Sandy Lee Carlson. Hi, Sandy.
How's it going there, Ed?
It's good. How does it feel to be on the other side of the microphone?
A little weird, but okay.
We're going to talk today about Sandy's new book, Everything Beautiful in Its Time, and a little bit about how Sandy writes and what she's inspired by. For those of you who listen to or watch the podcast a lot, you don't often get a lot of background on Sandy. She is an educator, a writer, a former local poet laureate. She is the managing partner of Ornog Mountain Publishing. She is the founder and owner of One Tree at a Time. And she's just a generally great person to have around. So where do you want to start today?
I want to start by adding that I am the mother of Adela Carlson of Adela Carlson Studios. Check her out and talk about Everything Beautiful in Its Time, my new collection.
Okay, so what inspired this collection? This is your 12th, is that right?
I don't know. Maybe it's the 12th? Well, the cover is a clue to what inspired me. That is a baby black-eyed Susan about to sprout in my garden, about to bloom. And here's some yarrow and black-eyed Susans also thriving in the summer. And what inspired me to come up with this collection was gardening. I am a proud graduate of the Stick It in the Ground and See What Happens School of Gardening, as well as a graduate of the Yukon Master Gardener program. And this past 2 years actually, in our little patch behind our home, I decided to plant some native plants to attract pollinators and to absolutely replace the non-contributing zeros that were growing there, namely daylilies, lily of the valley, vinca, pachysandra, and bittersweet, and make a positive contribution to the food web. And what I learned in the process was pretty awesome. And things that I knew intellectually made sense to me viscerally and emotionally as a result of this hard work that I did in the garden.
So you write a lot of nature poetry anyway. So this one is different because it's so much garden inspired.
This one is different because things made sense to me in a real way, in a holistic way that didn't before. For example, one of my heroes is Joseph Campbell, the author of Hero with a Thousand Faces, the scholar who articulated the hero's journey archetype in the 1940s and really helped me make a lot of sense of life through his writing about mythology. And one of the things Campbell talks about a lot is how eternity is right now. It's not on the other side of death. It's right now. And okay, I get it, but I don't get it, And I think it all started to make sense in the garden because the land where we live was once farmland. Before that, it was forest. At one point, it was covered with glaciers. And so there was this incredibly rich soil that we had. right? Those non-contributing zeros who shall be nameless that I mentioned a few minutes ago were gone. They lived on the surface. There was really rich, beautiful soil beneath that. And being under the sun, sometimes out in the rain, working that soil, I realized every life that had ever gone before was a part of that soil and would become a part of my flowers. So the people I loved and missed because they had passed in a very real way were a part of that land that I had my hands on. And there's also science that Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about in Braiding Sweetgrass about how the smell of the earth triggers the same, basically the same hormonal response as being held by your mom as a baby. And that sense of safety and security that comes from being out there working the soil really struck me because I was never out there for 10 or 15 minutes. It was hours and hours at a time. And I felt different as a result of that. And, sitting back and watching the zinnias grow to 6 feet tall, the Joe Pye weed grow to 5 feet tall, the goldenrod tower above us spoke to the richness of the soil and the power of even a marginal effort to make a difference that heals the earth. All these things together inspired this collection. So that's what made it different. It isn't showing off that I know the botanical Latin for certain plants or just listing things. It was about being there.
So, how much in the gardens that you've been working in, how much have you found that is a non-contributor that doesn't belong there, that came there from somewhere else that shouldn't be there? Because that's another passion of your life, which is getting rid of invasive plants here and in other places.
Funny you should mention. Um, Along with those pretty girls, right, the lilies, who smell amazing in the spring. And if you tell people you don't like lily of the valley, just be careful. You might get decked with a handbag. It's not good. Just say it from a distance. But also winged euonymus or burning bush, mile a minute vine, and Asian jumping worms. They were my scourge this summer in the garden. I had heard about them, and you know what you got because they do jump. They wiggle and writhe, and they're very athletic worms. Good old-fashioned European earthworms lay there. It was not a good year to be a worm in my company. I'll tell you that. What we have here is very clay-rich soil, so the jumping worms and the other worms didn't really want to be bothered. So I was able to get rid of a lot of them along the edges. But anyway, there are a lot of these things that came into American horticulture in the 19th and 20th centuries that were meant to prevent erosion, provide shade, provide hedges to keep livestock from roaming. And the impulse was logical. And also, a lot of them do have aesthetic appeal. But the problem with them is they don't belong here because they don't sustain our wildlife, and wildlife from the smallest insects to our larger predators. So they're taking up space and providing nothing. Oh, Rosa Sharon too. Another one of those pretty girls we could all live without. So that's that. But my poetry didn't concentrate on eradication so much as a celebration and exploration of the beauty of belonging here, which is what we can create when we plant native plants.
Do you find that what you wrote for this book is a part of your groove zone? The pitch comes in and it's right in the zone that a batter likes, and that's the pitch the batter goes and swings at. The garden and invasives, removing them, those are your happy places. Is this also a happy place for writing?
Um, yeah, sports metaphors, even when you explain them, are very, very, very elusive. But yeah, there's joy in this collection, and I think I lost my mom in the fall of 2019 and my dad in the spring of 2020. I knew I was losing my mom. It was a shock to me that I lost my dad. Um, Very traumatic time, and a lot of writing was about reintegration of myself with my world. Um, so from a came a lot of those poems came from a place of sorrow and the happy place, the place of peace and sustenance, or a lot of mythology. Um, I leaned heavily on Joseph Campbell during those years. This is a different place, and it's a place where all of that beautiful stuff that Joseph Campbell writes about was born without the training wheels. I saw it for myself.
All right. Do you want to introduce us to some of the poems in the book?
I do. I do. I said it's a happy place, but I could cry thinking about it. This one's called Honoring Love. It is the job of the living to assure those who have gone before us that we revere them, that they live in our hearts, and the work of loving the earth goes on. I see you, Mom, in the blue sky and clouds, the promise of hope, showered in the sunlight, spread across the broad universe of the living. So that's what I'm talking about.
There's a little bit of all our paths in nature, and um, you know, and stewardship in a lot of churches also is a big thing, and a lot of that stewardship involves taking care of nature and taking care of the earth. And there are a lot of people that seem to do it much better than a lot of other people. You have another one?
Um, yeah, and this is called in media res. So our Greek brothers are back in the game here, and I had some fun with some wordplay, and yeah. Anyway, in media res, the daughters of Zeus will awaken you, and having shaken you and taken you to the birthplace of bright constellations, opening your eyes to revelations, spinning you like a bright heavenly gyre, evaporating dream mist in their fire, that the story you tell will rain like dreams on eager souls awaiting heaven's schemes. Find your course on your solitary way, till dawn's rosy fingers beckon you to play inside stories where your heart will find song. Life well lived in truth will find its way ere long. Muses, begin the story where you will. A wellspring of hope arises within me still.
It's quite different from the first one that referred to your mom a lot. Um, does this one to you feel as personal as the first one you read?
Yeah, because the daughters of Zeus are my girls, Ed. You know, I spend my years with them all the time. And the Odyssey, the epics begin in media res, in the middle of things. And the whole thing is you're speaking to the muses and you're saying, what story will I tell? And what you realize is your story is every story, and you're not the owner of your story, that the universe owns the stories. And you're telling the story that the universe sends to you because your heart and your soul are open to it. So it becomes deeply personal. And of course, I'm being a little cheeky at the end, saying I'm really in a good mood here. So pick something good, you know. And that's where that one came from.
All right. How about one more?
Yeah, outside bedroom window, um, there's a maple tree that's doing really well because we've had so much rain after we've had a really cold winter with snowpack. Beautiful things to have in a Connecticut winter if you love your maple trees, which I do. Also produces snow days for school teachers, which I am. Um, so mutually beneficial. I call that tree the Cyclops because it's had a limb severed right smack where an eyeball might be. Um, but I can measure the lengthening and the shortening of the days by how clearly I see the Cyclops out the window when I put the blind up in the morning. And this poem is inspired by my buddy. It's called Winter Goddess. Moonlight penetrates my sleeping eyes, flowing like a placid golden river, cradled in a floodplain of grassy dreams that pillow hope, safe and sure until morning. A leaf lifted by a breeze, I drift upward through branches made bare by winter, resting in soft snow on a still oak bough between the glistening moon and the stream that sings a light song to the waiting sea. Snow that held me to the sky eases, softening both of us until I fall, returning to a dark that dawn will soon swallow. A dreamer, eager for life, a goddess. I follow. You may notice I switched the type of tree there. Nothing personal, Cyclops, but that's how I tell time. And I got a personal sense of love, I think, for oak trees because I grew up surrounded by them in Danbury. And to say Dad was careful with money back in the day would be not quite saying it, but he was. But one thing he did was take care of the oak trees. And when the gypsy moth, now called the spongy moth, came around, that debacle, he had the tree sprayed, and we had magnificent mature oak trees, and um, he had them pruned. He cared for these trees like uh, like you wouldn't believe. Um, and so the imagery of being held up like a new baby presented to the four directions was the idea there, and uh, Dad was in
Well,
there.
the oak tree is the tree, right? I mean, it's food source, habitat, the granddaddy of all trees, I guess.
It's a keystone species, and as as the entomologist Doug Tellamy says, if you want to do something for the world, plant an oak tree because it will become home for insects, animals. It's a food source for sure. And you think about these heavy rains we're getting, and people panic that the trees are going to fall down. It's ridiculous. Um, but the idea that you know the trees actually slow the intensity of the rain's impact on the ground, and if you keep the soil loose around the drip line of the tree, and that's just however far the branches extend straight down, that area will absorb the water, and you don't have the flooding, and you don't have some of the nonsense damage that we get. It's pretty typical that when there's been heavy rain, that people want to go chop all the big trees down because that's where we are as humans. We're afraid of the trees. I don't know what to do about that. Oh, you know what? I'd like to read just one more, and this one would be for our beautiful daughter and her new husband, Adela and Aaron Snyder. And I just want to add that Adela gave us the horrifying challenge of reading poems at her wedding, and it was intimidating because, of course, your daughter is your life, and you want to give her the best that you have, and what could possibly be good enough. So the phenomenon of that writing experience was that 3 poems ended up being about their dogs. Um, because they have their way of worming into the middle of things. Um, and this song about a raptor is about a beautiful red-tailed hawk that is the master of its universe and finds its happiness. This is called Love Lifted. Lifted by the late spring sun, the hawk soars above the red maple, who leafed out late after a cold spring and chilling downpours. Here the hawk in winter perched and would wait. Who knows the gift of time, knows spring will come, knows the hawk will soar, no longer alone. Blue skies warmed by the summer sun will bathe her in the same light. She is not alone. What dreams may carry you, what distant breeze opens your heart to sweet joy, old as time. Your hearts carry you, each heart's the other's lee. Together, ever home, the world is divine. Love found, love honored, the union of souls. One love, one family, one heart, one soul.
There you go. You had a much easier time with that process than I did, just by virtue of the fact that also, I mean, look at how many poems you got as a result of it, right? I mean, I was lucky to get my one, um, which we had fun with, but
But but the challenging part was explaining to all our dearly beloveds gathered there that comparing your daughter to a raptor is a good thing.
yeah.
And of course, later when I encountered that same red-tailed hawk about to eviscerate a fish crow, I thought, well, I'm glad this came after the wedding. I don't know what I would have done, you know. Uh, but anyway, that's how that goes. And I think the title of the poem comes from Ecclesiastes and this idea that there's a time for everything, and that's the story there. And yeah,
All right. So you said two more. Did you have another one, or are you stopping
no,
there?
no, you're no, those were the two more. There was the one you
Oh,
said I could read, and then one more, so that's two.
oh, okay. So what's next for you, for Ornog Mountain Publishing, for One Tree at a Time, for Master Gardener Sandy? What's coming next?
Well, what I learned about myself as a gardener in this process is that, um, and I'm not saying this about myself, but I'm saying that my encounters with gardeners have been really amazing. What I have really enjoyed about encountering other gardeners is, unlike the teachers in the programs, right? They don't pretend to know everything. They will wonder and look things up and ask and accept that you maybe new at something, but you might also know something. So there's this deep respect, I think, that just takes place, and you know um, that there's so much to know. You can't know everything, and that welcoming curiosity about the world is the place where I want to be, and that's kind of where I want to be as an educator. I would like the outdoors to be my classroom. I am never happier than when I'm working with people outside, looking at plants, removing invasives. So I call my little business One Tree at a Time, because when I'm out there doing that, the focus is on the next tree. And how do I, by removing all the junk around it, make space for that tree to do what it's meant to do, and thrive? And it becomes a very personal sense of connection with that tree. We are doing this together. And, as the great writer Ethan Tapper talks about in his book, How to Love a Forest, what he realized when he acquired land and began to restore it as forest is, you're a part of the forest. It isn't you go in and you come out and that was you in the forest. You're part of it. The birds are a part of it. The debris that people leave behind is a part of it. The whole thing is a part of it. I think these kinds of revelations make me feel quite ready to to do more in this vein. Yesterday I was doing some work on invasives in the neighborhood, and the usual, well, you're going to be at that for a long time, and that's a thankless task. And you know what? It's actually not a thankless task. It's a joyous one. Giving a juniper a chance to be a juniper, that's a well spent hour. So that's what's next for me. And I think for Oronog, what I see and we've discussed is how poetry has a place in a living community, in a thriving community, and not community just people living together, and not community in the corrupted use of the word that we hear so often now, just people with an interest. The poetry community isn't 25 people who don't know each other but happen to write poetry, but it's people finding each other through the poetry and creating opportunities to make those connections at an open mic, at an online Zoom, at an event that we create, where we're bringing food in for people who are struggling with need during this tumultuous time we're living in, and being good neighbors and good citizens, and demonstrating that care in very real and practical ways, but being alive to the world around us. I think that is what's next. And I think I've said this so many times about publishing poetry and being among poets. I think our world is rich because we have Billy Collins, and we've had Mary Oliver, and we had Dylan Thomas, and we had the Bard, and we have them because their poems live, and our poems will live too, in a different scale. And we can't not hear our voices or share our voices because we are not them, and we shouldn't be silenced or remain invisible because we are not them. That becomes the pinnacle of democracy, when we can share who we are through our creative gifts in a public space, and honor that, and go on our merry way and be better for knowing each other on that higher level. So that's what's next.
All right. Well, that's a good place to wrap up. And
well, no, I think there's one more thing to say.
What's that?
If people want to be a part of the community we're trying to create, then OronogMountainPublishing.com is a place to connect with us, because we welcome authentic voices.
Right. And of course, we have the online poetry journal, we have the monthly Zoom, and we have all the events that Oronog puts on.
Yeah, check us out. It's pretty cool. All right. Thanks, Ed.
Sandy, thank you for being on People and Their Poems. Hope you have a great rest of the afternoon.
This has been People and Their Poems, presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about this episode. Visit OronogMountainPublishing.com for more information about our services and writing opportunities. And visit peopleandtheirpoems.net to learn more about the podcast.